All right, we're picking up with our interlinear Bible training. And as I said before in part one, we're taking a different approach. And because of all the clicks involved, we're not going to do a interactive video. So this will just be kind of flow. When you need to rewind, just pause and rewind the video. Now, we left off at visual filters, and we're picking up at a new thing with Logos 9, and that is the Factbook. And they've done a lot with the Factbook. In fact, it's located here on the menu. It's also now located here on the main menu. Now, what's going on? Well, first things first is it's a toggle switch with a menu. What do I mean by that? Well, if you click the Factbook, you now toggle it on or off. Notice that when I clicked it, I'm now getting these very subtle blue lines. They're almost imperceptible, but they are there. And they tell you that if you click on those, you will enable the Factbook. Now, if I float my mouse over it, let's say the Earth, I can see the two Factbooks, Animal and Earth. So if I click it, notice that Earth is selected. There's my two choices, Animal and Earth. And then if I click on Animal, I now can get Factbook details on Animal. Very, very handy. Now, if you're wondering, how can I control what is underlined so I'm not overwhelmed? That's what the little triangle right next to the Factbook icon is for. So if we click that triangle, we can choose what we want to see underlined. In other words, what words do we want enabled so we just have a simple one click to the Factbook? So we have people, places, things, generic entities, pronouns, implied subjects, and show underlines. So when you uncheck show underlines, that will hide the underlines for you and disable the feature. Now, I'm going to check all of these just so we can see that. Now, I find the Factbook very annoying because there are times when I want to click on a word and I don't want the Factbook. And so you'll want to disable this using the toggle switch. And then when you're ready, you can enable it. Between you and me, though, it's really not necessary because if you right-click on the word, you can then see the different items, the things. You can click on that, and then you can go right to Factbook and get there. That avoids you accidentally clicking on something that you don't want. Plus, when Factbook is enabled, you lose the feature that allows you to find repeated lemmas or corresponding lemmas. So that's very frustrating as well. So just be aware that if you want those Factbook entries, you must click to enable, use the triangle to choose which ones you want identified, and when you're not using the Factbook links, just toggle it to turn it off. The next one is really important, and this is the Alpha Omega interlinear window. And there's actually two interlinear windows. Now, like the Factbook icon, you have the first icon and then the triangle. So let's click on the triangle first. Notice with the triangle, you get a menu option. You have inline, reverse interlinear, and reverse interlinear pane. Let's turn on the first one and check it. Now, when you check it, you'll notice that the window changed. I now have additional information. You can control that information by clicking on the triangle and expanding the menu. We have the surface text. Since we're in English Bible, that represents the English. Then we have the manuscript. That represents the actual Hebrew text written down in the scrolls in the Bible. Then you have manuscript transliterated. That is the phonetic spelling in English of the Hebrew word. So if you can't read Hebrew, transliterated is a great way to know how to pronounce the Hebrew words. Lemma, think of LE lexicon, LE lemma. This is the dictionary form. Lemma is the Hebrew word. If you check the box lemma transliterated, again, you get the phonetic spelling in English. There's the root word. That'll be in Hebrew, and root transliterated. You also get morphological information, which tells you what kind of word it is and how it's functioning. So is it a verb? Is it an imperative, etc.? Strong's number is included, and Louw-Nida is included. But be aware, if you're in the Old Testament, though Louw-Nida is checked, you won't see it because Louw-Nida is only a New Testament numbering system. So leave that checked, but you won't see the number in the Old Testament. All right, so we've enabled everything, and you can see that's a lot of row of information, and that's probably too much. So I recommend clicking the triangle and doing the absolute minimum. If looking at the Greek and Hebrew is important to you, then do that. I tend to care about the manuscript, and so I like to just kind of uncheck everything else, and so this way I can see the Hebrew with the English. Now, if you're wondering what those little numbers are for, that tells you the Hebrew word order. As I said, we're dealing with reverse interlinears, which means the English is the order of the words, not the Hebrew or the Greek. So here we have the English word they, and that turns out that the first word in Hebrew is they. This one's pretty straightforward. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, here we go. 8 and 7. They're actually in Hebrew the reverse order, and that's important to know. So his comes after the word kind, and that's how Hebrew works. So the numbers tells you the word order and lets you know where it is positionally in the text in the original Hebrew. That's a pretty handy feature. Now let's click the little triangle again. Let's turn off the inline reverse interlinear. And let's click the triangle to collapse the menu. And let's click on reverse interlinear pane. Now the information is down at the bottom. So it's really just a visual preference. Do you prefer to have the English at the top and then the Hebrew at the bottom? Now to turn on and off rows of information, you have to go over here to the far left and you have to right click. So if I right click on it, I'll get all my options and then I can check or uncheck what I do and do not want to see. So this is pretty handy. Notice that we have the additional field of sense. That's very helpful. Now in this case, I just have the surface text, the manuscript transliterated. I really don't need that, so I'll uncheck it, and the sense. Now, if you are strategic, you could actually turn on both windows and kind of get the best of both worlds. You've got some information here at the top, some information at the bottom. They're linked together. If you click on a word at the top, notice that they both are highlighted to let you know, hey, what you're looking up here is the one down here. You can still see the numbers to let you know where it is. So I like to use these together. Sometimes I like to use one or the other. And like the Factbook, it's a toggle switch. So if you click it, it'll go away. You click it again, it will remember all those settings. So set these up just the way you want it beforehand. Once you've got it all figured out, then just use the toggle switch to turn it on and off. That way you're not having to reset it every single time. So we've clicked it to turn it on and we click to disable. Now let's go to the next window, and this is a wonderful feature of Logos called Multiple Resources Displays. Now what this is doing is allowing you to use your space better with multiple books. And like the other two icons, you have the toggle switch and then you have the settings. Now, right now I have it enabled and you didn't see any change because I haven't set up an extra book. But let's do that. So I'm going to click on the triangle. Notice in the multi-resource view, you get access to everything. Now I'm going to type in another translation. I'm going to put in the NASB 95. When I type that in the search box, you'll see that I have collections that include the New American Standard, and I also have resources. That's the one we're looking for. So I'm going to check the box NASB 95. You'll see that it's now moved to the top, and I'm going to click Save. And I'm going to click Save again. Now to turn off the menu, just click the triangle. That'll change the display. Now, in a few moments, Logos will open up the New American Standard, and now I can see both translations side by side. Now, right now, we're looking at them as two vertical windows. If we click on the triangle, you'll notice at the top right, we have the parallel kind of view, and then we have the stack view. So I'm going to click on the stack view, and now I've got the New King James at the top, New American Standard at the bottom. This gives you a little more space. It's a little more efficient. And if I were to drag the New American Standard Bible in here, you can see that I'm getting an extra row of information compared to the other window. Now, I could shrink it, but again, I'm still losing a row of information. Actually, two rows if you count the tab and the menu. And that gives me more viewing space. So this is a much more optimal way to look at multiple translations. Now, I like the side-by-side view better than the stack view, so I'm going to change that. Now, like before, since it's a toggle switch, I can click it once, go back to my primary resource, click and toggle it, and see the other resource. So very handy, allowing you to quickly access your favorite book. So I use this not only for favorite translations, but I'll use this with commentaries, maybe my top 2 or 3 commentaries. And that way I can toggle them very quickly without having to go into my library icon or use up my valuable shortcut toolbar space. So use this wisely and strategically. The next one is the parallel resource button. This is very similar to the multi-resource view, but not quite. Now, what's going on here is that I'm getting a list of parallel resources. It's a list of all my Bibles. Those are parallel resources. Now, if I wanted to jump from, let's say, the King James to New American Standard, I just click my parallel resource and I click New American Standard. In a few moments, my translation changes. So this is a way to quickly jump to very similar or parallel resources. Let me click the parallel before, and there it is. Now, you can also hit the right arrow key on your keyboard, and that will cycle through the list of books in your parallel resource list. So I hit the right button, got ESV. Now I'm going to hit the left button. It'll take me backwards, and there's the New American Standard. And if I hit the left arrow key on the keyboard, I'm back to my New King James. Now you'll notice that when I click on this, I have some additional information. Now, I went too far with that parallel and got opened up a book that I don't want to look at. So let's click on King James. Here we go. And we're back to the King James Version. Now, when you click on Parallel Resources, you may have noticed that I've got this thing called Parallel Resources Jump List. This is actually a custom collection I've created. And when we get to collections, I'll show you how you can create your own custom parallel set of resources that you can use. But for now, we're going to pass on that at this time. There's another icon up here, these two wavy lines. And we click on that, it says Equivalent Resource. This is kind of fascinating in that some resources, Logos says, look, I've got an identical resource just like it. You're not looking at it. And so this can link me to another resource. In this case, I have the complete word study of the Old Testament. So if I click on that, now that will open up. It's still King James, but it's the word study, which has some additional information. So whenever you see those two wavy lines, click on it and see what it's bringing up as equivalent. I also have the AV, which is a different version of the King James Version. So it just gives you another way to jump to another identical or similar resource. Very powerful, very helpful.